So as you see here in this, I'm gonna open the YouTube, the one I normally use before. So we're going to be dealing with a for loop today. We have done a for loop already, basics of a for loop on how to start with a for loop. So today we are going to check what can you do, also how you can work with this for loop. So let's say, for example, you are writing a code whereby in this code, we are going to ask a user. A user is going to, the user is going to print, maybe let's say it's a teacher from grade 12. So the teacher from grade 12, so the teacher from grade 12 or let's say grade 12, they want to record their results for their maths students. So we're going to ask the teacher to enter the results of their student. We're gonna use a cout. In the cout there, we're gonna ask enter your maths student results. So results. So the user will enter the results. So when the user enter the results, we're gonna want to, we can say maybe results like this way here when we declare. So, but when we say results, we have to declare this word results. So we're going to use double because sometimes okay, let's use float for this results, float results. So in this result here, we got to use, we must have a criteria when a user is done. For example, we can tell the teacher that maybe when you are done, what must he press? We know that the result is either a student will get 0 or will get 0 or above. Ne? It's gonna be between 0 and above. Zero, like if we are working with percentage, it's going to be 0 to 100%. We can see out again. We ask a user that, okay, we ask the teacher, here I'm gonna put /n. The /n is just the meaning of end line. Then we're gonna say to the teacher, enter, let's say -1, enter -1 when you are done. Ne? The user when it's done is going to enter -1. So when the user enter -1, when he or she is done, then we will have to record these results. When we have to record these results, the first thing that we're gonna do, we will use a while loop. Ne? So here today is a for loop and the while loop. I'm going to start with showing you how to do this code using a while loop. So we can say while this result is like that, while the result is not, as long as it's not equal to -1. Ne? If the results are not equal to -1, what must happen? See in the results. So see in the results, it must be, the name must be the same as this one, the one that we have there. So now it's going to, as long as the results are not -1, they are going to see in those results. So when they are going to see in the results, now what we can do is that we can run our code. When we run our code, you can see that we don't have any errors. We build our code there, we compiled our code. Now we're going to run our code. So when we run our code, you will see that the program is asking, enter your maths student results, enter -1 when you are done. So we can say the first student get 55, then the other one get 90%, the other one 75, the other one get 44, then the other one got 87. Let's say there is someone who gets 66. Then maybe that class is composed of exactly this kind numbers of the results that we have. The teacher will enter -1. Then the program, it stopped. But it allows the teacher to enter as many numbers as possible. After that, when the teacher enter -1, then the code stop. When the code stop, now we can say, how about if we want to write in the same program, how about if we want to know how many students does this teacher have? We can say, okay, we can say int. Maybe you can use x. You say x equals to 0. When you start at 0, Then we're going to say, while x is not -1, what must happen? We need these results to be recorded. We need these results to be what? We need to increment x. We're going to increment x. So let's first now, before we increment the x, let's see if we can get the student, not the number of the student, like how many students are there in that class. We can see out there, we tell the users or the teacher, you say, there are, for example, there are students, you see. So we're going to use x, then maybe we can say students. Let me also put end line, then semicolon. So now we can build our code. Let's build our code and we see if it can tell us exactly how many students are there without entering, without including -1. So if I enter, the other student can get 34, the other one get 44, the other one got 90, then the other one got 100, and then let's say two students, they got 100, then the other one got 76, the other one 55, the one 68, then the other one 69, then -1, then the tutor is done answering the student. So here, don't mind about, we didn't create a space, but say there are 9 students. Let's count if exactly is 9 without including -1. You can see that is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. 1, okay, let's count again. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. It's 9 exactly. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. And then it's 9, it's not counting 10. So now you can see if we put this x plus plus before cin, it was going to count -1. So that's why I put it above the cin. So now I can say, okay, I want to know the number, I want to know the sum, the total sum of the results. So I can also have a float. So this float, I can say I'm having a float sum, which is going to be equals to 0. So in this float sum, we are going to say, we are going to increment it. We're going to say sum plus equal to results. So it's going to be dealing what? It's going to be it's going to be what? Incrementing, adding those results. It's going to be incrementing those results. So it's going to add them until the end. So now we can build our code again. So when we build our code, we can run it. We are still using a while loop, remember? So everything that we are doing, we are still going to convert it to for loop. So if you enter, we're going to enter the results. Let's start with 55, 66, 77, 88, 90, and then 45, 65. Then let's assume that this is the class students in that class of grade 12. Then we're going to enter -1. Then when we enter -1, it's showing us that there are 7 students, but the problem, we didn't display what? We didn't see out the sum. So let's also see out the sum. We can say the average is, we're gonna use sum. Then I think after here, we can just say end line. It's fine. So let's build our code, and after building our code, let's run it. So now we just built our code and we are running the code. So when we do again in this code, so what is going to happen? We're gonna do the same: 55, 66, 77, 88, 99. Let's say the other one got 65 again, 76, 80, 99 again, 34. Then -1. Then now it's telling us that there are 9 students. If you read, it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. And the average is 659. So if you use your calculator, you add all this number without -1, you will see that the average is 600. Not this average here, we only calculated the sum. So the total sum here, actually, we must say not average, the total sum. So in order for me to get the average, I will have to say the sum divided by x. So in order for me to get the average, I have to say sum divided by x. So if I just say the sum only, I was just talking about the total sum. So let's repeat, let's build it again and run our code. So when we repeat this code, we're gonna start 44, 55, 6, 77, 88, 99, 100, then let's say 23, 43, 78, then -1, then our code stop, but there are how many? 10 students, and now the average is 67.3. You see what's happening? So we now managed to get the average. So what happens? We calculated the total sum first. We calculated the total sum, which is, this is the total sum, is going to add them. Then we take the total sum, we divide by x, we divide by total number of students. So this is how you can write this kind of code using C++ and using while loop. So we know that, okay, we have this code, but we can do the rest. We can try to write this using what? We can convert this code using a for loop. So if I have to convert the same code using the for loop, I will be having, I can say for int, let's say this int is going to start at what? At I, at x. For int x, we can say, okay, the problem part here, what I see here for x, remember, is going to check how many students. So we won't be knowing how many students they are there. And we also want to know the only thing that is about the results. So we can say for int x, so now the other problem part, when we change this one here, it won't really be, it will be a problem because of x result is going to be in the form of, is going to be in a form of what? It's going to be in a form of is going to be in a form of, the result is going to be in the form of, they will be entering them. So this problem that I just gave it to you now, it won't be that much easy to convert it to a for loop. So we're gonna stick, it's gonna stick on the what? On the while loop. So the for loop here, it won't really work, because here in the while loop, when you check a while loop, we say it results which is not equal to -1. So here it won't really work, as it won't really work here. So in this kind of problem, whereby you have to get averages, so if you are writing your code, use the, you must use the for loop, you must use the while loop. So when we're gonna go to a for loop now. So with a for loop, we already talked about the basics of a for loop. So I was just showing you this, how to solve also this kind of problem. So when we already talked about the basics of a for loop, so with a for loop, you say for, we can say int I, or we can use x equals to 1. You can start at 1. Then we have to have updating statement. I is less equals to 5. Then I plus plus for increment. So in this one here, I showed you that you can print something that it can continue. For example, you can see out, we say hello world. When we say hello world, this code is going to do what? This code is going to print hello world 5 times. So let's build it. So when we build our code, there are no errors, then we can run it. So we run it, you can see it printed hello world 5 times. Printed hello world 5 times. So now when it printed hello world 5 times, we might want to do a lot. There are many things that we might want to do with the for loop. So the first thing that normally we might want to do with the for loop, as I've indicated before, you might want to print numbers. Let's say maybe you want to add, maybe you have a number. Let's say you want to add 5. You are writing a code whereby outside of the for loop, let's say we have int x, which is equals to 5. So in this int x equals to 5, you want it to add 5 to the 5, like it must say 5 plus 5, then it displays. So let's say it's gonna be displayed. The first thing you're gonna say cout. Then when you say cout, you want it to display x plus equal to 5. So it's gonna be adding 5 each and every time when it iterates. So when you do that, we're gonna put an end line. I will do an end line there. So when you do that, x plus equals to 5, this is just an expression. Or when you say x plus equals to 5, we can say, for example, instead of that, we can also say, instead of writing it this way, we can write x there. Then we increment x here plus equal to 5. We have incremented the x. When we have incremented this x, it's gonna start by saying is 1 less than 5. It found that is true. Then it print 5, x as 5. Then it's gonna change 5, x is gonna add 5 to that 5 is gonna be 10. So which means we're going to have 5, 10, 15 until 5 times. So this is something that you can also do with a for loop, but there are many things that you can do with a for loop. So let's build our code and run it. So if we run our code, you will see that it's going to print 5, 10, 15, 20, 25. You see, so that's how I used my for loop in order for me to print such problem. So let's proceed again with this for loop. So when we are working with this for loop, it depends on the question. What are you going to do with the question? So it depends on the type of a question that you are asked. So we have something called the net test for loop. So the net test for loop, the logic here that you must understand is that in a for loop, there will be another for loop. You are going to have an outer for loop. You will have an outer for loop, and you're going to have an inner for loop. When we say inner for loop, you must remember that inside the for loop, there is another for loop. So which means if inside the for loop, there is another for loop, what happens is that this is an inner for loop. So the inner for loop, when it's an inner for loop, so what happens here is that it's going to first check if the state, if this for loop, if the expression is true. When it's true, it's going to execute this for loop until this inner for loop becomes false. And after that, when it becomes false, then it's gonna go back again. It check again if the inner outer for loop is true. Then it reset again from the first one, do like the same thing until this one is false, until this outer for loop is false. Then your program will terminate. So if we have to do it practical, the first thing that I'm gonna use to explain for you about the neatest for loop, it will be a metric. It will be about, I think the star one is going to be the best example that we can use. You print a star, then it prints a second star again, two stars, then it prints 3 stars, it print 4, it print 5. So if we check here in the sequence, the sequence is that it started with 1, is 1 less than, it's gonna start with 1, then after that it goes to 2. So you might think of, okay, this is a sequence maybe which is going to start as 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So in this sequence, the difference is 1 each and every time. But when we have to run this code using the next test for loop, we're going to say for int our int I, which is going to be equals to 1, into I is going to be less equals to, let's say we want it to be 5 times. So the 5 times 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So this is an outer for loop. So the outer for loop, in other words, it also represent the rows. It also represent the rows. So we're going to say we want 4 rows, and then it must increment this I. Then after that, when we have done that, we will have an inner for loop. In our inner for loop, you will see that the change is changing by difference is 1. So we can say we have int j, which is going to be equals to 1. But in this int j for the update statement is that I is going to start here as 1. It's going to say is 1 less than 5. It finds that is true. Then it goes to an inner loop. So when it goes to an inner loop, it's going to find that j equals to what? J equals to 1. So when j equals 1, we can make j to be less equals to I. So I is going to be 1. It's going to say it's 1 less than 1. Then when it's found that is true, then it's going to, you have to print the star. So we're going to increment also j. Then when it print the star, we are in the inner loop. We're going to use it out, see out. Then it's going to print the star. So when it prints this star, I'm gonna make a space a little bit there so that there must be a space, or this is gonna be fine. So when it prints the star, it's gonna check again. It's gonna change j to 2. Is 2 less than 1? Then it finds that is false. Then it goes and check here where there is my cursors. If there is some statement, then we can put C out here. We use an end line to go to a new line. Then it's gonna come here in this one. It found an end line. Then it's going to go to a new line. Then it goes back here to I. It says it increment I to 2. Then it's gonna say is 2 less than 5? Then it finds that yes, it's true. 2 is less than 5. Then here now I is going to start with 2. Then it's going to start with 1 at say j as 1. Is 1 less than 2? It finds that is true. It print star. Increment j is 2 less than 2. It finds that is true. It print star. In the same line, it increment j is 3 less than 2. When it finds that is false, it's gonna go to this line. It find the end line. It create an end line. When it created an end line, it already printed this. Now it's going to print 3. So the same procedure, it will follow the same pattern until this I is 6. When it says 6 less than 5, then it found that is false. Then the program will terminate or will stop. So that's how the logic of the program, how the program is going to work. So if we can check in our code now, we can build our code to visualize, to see the visualization of this code. So if we build this code now, you will see that when we run it, what will happen is going to print exactly those stuff, exactly the way I've shown you. So the most important thing that you can check how I wrote my code and the expressions. So the most important thing was this, the trick that you must use the I, and then you must remember the first one, it represents the rows, and the inner loop, it represents the column. So if you can take it as that, the way I'm saying it, so you won't have that much problem in maybe answering this kind of questions. So you have an inner loop and outer loop. So you can write as many program as possible. So I'm gonna ask you a question before I proceed with this lesson. Do you have any question based on what we are doing now?
Not yet. So far, it's not
So
that
far you
bad.
are fine, eh? Are you understanding? If I can give you a question now with regards to for loop, nest test for loop, are you going to be able to answer it after this explanation? Do you think if I can give you a question based on the nest test for loop, are you gonna be able to answer it?
Even though I have to visit on my own so that I can be able to be sure that I
Okay,
can
no problem. So let's go
answer.
to again. Let's say you want to print a matrix. We can say our matrix is going to be 1. I'm gonna do a simple matrix 1, 2, 3, and then 4, 5, and 6. So you have to print this as a matrix in using the neatest for loop. So you can see that we have how many rows? We have 2 rows. So which means here I'm going to change to 2 rows. 2. But how many columns do we have here? We have 1, 2, 3. We have 3 columns. Here from I'm going to use 3. Then the tricky part now is going to be that our matrix must print 1, 2, 3. So we can declare an int x, which is going to start at 1, starting outside of our outside of the for loops. Then after that, we can say to this statement that we are going to print x. So when we print x, in this one, when we are printing x, yeah, we're gonna say to this one, we're gonna put, let's say some space there is fine. When we put those spaces, we're going to increment x inside this loop. We can increment it here. We increment that x there. So the moment when what I've just did here is going to start with 1. It's going to print 1 is j less than 3. It's fine, that is true. Then it print 1. It increment to 2. Is 2 less than 3 until for 3 times until this loop become false. So I'm gonna build my code again that we don't have any errors, and I'm going to run this code. So when I run this code, you will see that in this code it's printing 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, exactly the way I wanted it to be. So what is the importance of learning the next test for loop, so or the more for loop? So the most important thing in this chapter is that you are going to be using this nested for loop in when you are working with an arrays. When you work with arrays, you're going to be using this nested for loop. So when we are working with arrays, we have an array of 2 dimension, array of 2 dimension. So we have an arrays of 2 dimension. So in this array of 2 dimension, you're going to be using the nested for loop. So today we are not going to cover about the arrays, but the classes, which is going to be at 7 p.m., we are going to cover about the arrays. So you can attend 7 p.m. class if you will be available. So now you can ask me maybe any questions based on the nested for loop. You can check any questions. So this,
Like on a working environment. So
okay, you can ask them. So what I'm gonna left you with now is that I'm gonna see you at 7 p.m. For now, you can be you can maybe when you get time, try to study what we just did now. Then at 7 p.m. we are going to work with arrays. Today we're going to be dealing with arrays. Then I will see you at 7 p.m.
all right, no problem. Thank you very much.
Right? Have a good day.
And you too. Thanks. Bye.